Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om Sumukascha Ekadantascha Kapilo Gajakarnakaha Lambodharascha Vikato Vignarajo Vinayakaha Dhumaketurganadhyakshaha Palachandro Gajananaha Vakratundaha Surpakarno Herambaha Skandapurvajaha Shuklambaradharam Vishnum Sasivarnam Chaturbhujam Prasannavadanam Dhyayet Sarva Vignopasantaye Yasyadvaradavaktradhya Parishadhya Parasatam Vignam Nignanti Satatam Vishvaksenam Tamasraye Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheswaraha Gurur Sakshat Parabrahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. With Bhagavan's grace, let us continue and understand some of the basics very carefully. Also, I wanted to share with you a few things about Narada himself. I know I mentioned we covered the story of Narada, how he learned from Sanat Kumara, and how at the age of 6, after his mother passed away, he went to the forest, and how he became a Brahma Rishi. The few other things about Narada that I want to share with you today, because there are two things. For any subject matter, there is a qualification and the authority of the teacher must be ascertained. At the same time, the quality and the deservedness of the student also needs to be ascertained, because the subject matter outlives both the student and the teacher. The subject matter is supreme. And so with that, we will also again cover what are the qualifications for a student. I want to take that over with you. I covered one aspect of it, but I want to complete that. But before that, let us go through the background information, whatever information we have about Narada. And keeping in mind, Narada is nothing but, on a most personal level, the outgoing breath and the incoming breath that this body takes, that each one of us is doing breathing, very natural. And that breathing has a music to it. And that music is a divine music. It is so hum. Incoming breath is so saha, and outgoing breath is aham. Saha, aham. I am that, I am that, I am that. That music is continuously going on. And that is the divine music that Narada is playing. And the veena that we associate with Narada is nothing but the nadis that run along our physical spinal column, and the ahlada dhvani that the nadis produce. That is the divine music that Narada is playing all the time in all places. Now there are several works that we believe that Narada has given us as part of his teaching. We also saw in our last class how Narada learned from Sri Rama himself about bhaktas, those questions that he asked. And then we also saw in our Bhagavatam sessions what Narada learned from his father, Brahma himself, right? So all the teachings that Narada acquired, how did he acquire those? Just by listening? That's what we're going to cover today. And what did he do with the teaching that he learned, the knowledge that he acquired? That also we're going to cover today. There are 4 works that have come from Narada. One is the Narada Bhakti Sutra. The other is Narada Smriti. The third one is Naradiya Siksha. And the fourth one is Sankita Makaranda. And these four have come from Narada. He's a divine sage, as we know, very reputed, as we also know, in all our religious scriptures. When you study his life, then, which we will very briefly cover, you will see that the teaching that he's going to incorporate, he's going to give us in the Narada Bhakti Sutra, they are all personally experienced by him and ascertained the veracity, the truth of those statements. It's very important to hear one thing, and then when you put that into practice, then you realize the truth of that particular teaching. That's a very divine experience, and he has done that. In the Vedic periods, there are several Vedic passages from Rigvedam where the Narada is the Rishi, and I'll just quickly mention that and move on because I don't want to be quoting Vedas here. But it's suffice to say that various parts of some parts of Rigvedam have been the mantras have been given to us by Narada. Then we saw the etymological meaning of the phrase Narada. Remember, in Sanskritam, every phrase actually describes an aspect of Bhagavan, the immanent, indestructible Bhagavan that is present, the essence of the Bhagavan present in that particular manifestation is what the Sanskrit word describes it. So when you understand the etymological meaning, then that's really a doorway into divinity. So what we saw, Narada means Naram Dadati iti Naradaha. Naram is water, Dadati, one who gives, iti Naradaha. And we also saw what type of a water it is we are talking of, nothing but Ksheerasaharam itself, right? And the another etymological meaning of Narada is Naram Paramatma Vishayakam Jnanam Dadati iti Naradaha. And Naram Paramatma Vishayakam Jnanam Dadati iti Naradaha. And that meaning comes to us, is given to us in Sabda Kalpa Druma. That's a scripture that gives that etymological meaning. Naram Paramatma Vishayakam Jnanam Dadati iti Naradaha. And all that simply says is a friend, philosopher, guide, and consoler of all gods, human beings, and demons also, and acts as the intermediary between God and his creation. That's what that means. Now, the third etymological description is something that we are ascribing to it, not necessarily in the scriptures, but as a human beings, and we run away with it and missing the essence of the whole thing. But let me cover that also. And that says, Naram Narasamuham Kalahena Dhyati Kandayati iti Naradaha. And what this means, it talks about Narada is the one who creates quarrels, who ferments quarrels. That's the meaning of that particular phrase. Let me go through that. That comes from Harivamsa. It says, Naram Narasamoham Kalahena Dhyati Kandayati iti Naradaha. But even though in our colloquial terminology, in our normal conversation among ourselves, we say Narada is a Kalahapriya, but we all know, without even the shred of doubt in our mind, that nothing but good comes out of all the persons and all the people that Narada has dealt with. And we know in the Puranas, how he went to Shiva himself and talked to the demon Andaka and talk to the demon who has been given tremendous power by Shiva to try the power on himself. And then he also goes to Ravana and manages to kind of entangle him, pushes Ravana to entangle himself on the tail of Bali. Then he goes to, in the Krishna Avataram, he goes to Kamsa and facilitates Kamsa to take actions and thereby causes end. Then he also in Krishna Avataram goes as a messenger to Indra from Krishna himself to remove Indra's pride and ego. And then in the Kshira Sagara, that churning of the milk ocean, when the nectar was got and the Devas obtained the nectar, they wanted to in fact destroy all the Rakshasas, all the Asuras. Narada advises them not to do that ruthless act. These are all quickly from Bhagavatam I shared with you. Then also you all know what happened when Hiranyakasipu goes to the Mandara mountain range to do his tapas. And then when the king gone, the Devas immediately attacked, and all the Asura ladies are all oppressed by the Devas. But Narada takes Hiranyakasipu's wife, gives her protection. She was carrying Prahlada, and then he teaches her, tells her the stories and glories of Bhagavan, which Prahlada hears, and you know what happened to him, how great a devotee that he became. And you also know who taught Dhruva the Shodakshara Mantram, and Narada only did that, right? And what happened to Dhruva after that? So there is a beautiful prayer to Narada that says, "Glory to the son of Brahma. He is the abode of all good. A single word from whom brought the salvation to Prahlada, and through whose grace Dhruva was enthroned permanently in his celestial station." The Dhruva star. So worship him. So these are very quick coverage of what Narada did. Now, he's also one of the wisest among all the sages, and is ever engaged in tapas. As the very first slokam of Valmiki Ramayanam, again, Narada is the one who came and taught Valmiki, right? Otherwise we would not have the Valmiki Ramayanam, right? So very first sentence, very first slokam, how Valmiki himself worships him. Okay? And tapahas swadhyaya niratam, he says, continuously engaged in tapas is the way that he begins. And that Narada, and then he continues, he says, tapasvi, always engaged in purification, vakvidam varam, among all the people who are eloquent and gifted in speech, he is the most supreme. And Muni Pungavam, the greatest among all the sages, that Naradam, Valmiki, Pariprapancha, he asked the question. That's how that particular slokam begins, even full of admiration and worship to Narada. And so remember, next time you think of Ramayana, where did it actually come from? We say Valmiki Ramayanam, taught to him by Narada, none other than that. And now we all know about Bhagavatam. How did we get this? Who taught Vyasa? Who wrote the Bhagavatam? It is only Narada who came and taught him. We know that, right? So that Narada, please think of him that way, not as Kalaha Priya. That is our creation. So this Narada we are talking of is most supreme. The same Narada who taught Valmiki and who taught Vyasa and who taught Dhruva, who taught Prahlada, and in our modern days he came and taught Saint Tyagaraja. And the same Narada is going to teach us the Narada Bhakti Sutra. Please approach it and remember it that way. And one more thing about the greatness of Narada that is given in Mahabharatam. Bhishma tells Yudhishthira, when Yudhishthira goes and talks to him, and we all recite Sahasranamam, right? But before that, before Sahasranam and all that, in the conversation between Yudhishthira and Bhishma, Bhishma tells Yudhishthira, Narada is a perfect ideal personality. He says, ideal personality, perfect ideal personality. Then Bhishma doesn't say that. He quotes the words of Krishna when Krishna spoke to Ugrasena. And that I want to share with you today, in English only, not in Sanskrit, okay? Krishna now speaks to Ugrasena. And Bhishma is conveying that to Yudhishthira. O king, he says, Bhishma says, I will now briefly recount the noble traits of Narada's character. The deadly pride of having a high character never enters his mind, although he possesses sacred learning and noble conduct to perfection. He is honored everywhere because he possesses a full measure of spiritual dignity, glory, intellectual penetration, tact, humility, noble birth, austerity, and heroism. And he is free from discontent, anger, unsteadiness, and procrastination. Definitely, he deserves worship, for he never deviates from his word, moved by lust or greed. High honor is paid to Narada everywhere because he is possessed of true self-knowledge, forbearance, tranquility, sense-control, straightforwardness, arjavam, as Bhagavan says, truthfulness in speech, firm love for God, high spirit, holy wisdom, compassion, an undeluded mind, and shining manners. He can be easily accommodated, for he is gifted with dignity, sweet decorum, purity, and power of good speech, and has no envy. Certainly, he is doing what is auspicious, and no sin can stain him. He never finds pleasure in others' perils. He secures his ends with the aid of scriptural wisdom and knowledge of past events. He is meek and equitable to all. He despises no one. Hence, also he neither likes nor dislikes anyone specially. He is vastly learned and endowed with the wonderful gift of diverse speech, and is never lazy or stubborn. He practices meditation not for securing esteem from others. No, he is leagues away from self-praise and speaks always softly. He observes the diverse behavior of men without despising anyone. And he is a master in the art of reconciling others. So he is honored everywhere. Though he is not attached to anyone, he is found to be deeply interested in all. He never keeps a doubt in suspense for long, and he is a good speaker. He is not regardless of other faiths, but lives according to his own faith. He never wastes a moment and never remains a master of himself. He has striven hard, worked very hard for perfection, and has attained supreme wisdom. He is ever contented with the Atma Vidya, the self-realization, and with great zeal and enthusiasm, he is always absorbed in that realization. He is not without the sense of shame, and is always open to instruction from others if that would add to his perfection. Never does he divulge the secrets of others, for his mind is always detached, intellect is firm, and is not affected agreeably or disagreeably by the obtainment or deprivation of objects of desire. Who would not make this paragon of virtue, efficient, holy, provident, and tactful, a beloved friend? This is what Krishna himself asked. Who would not make him as a beloved friend? So, we see that he was a Vedic rishi. He was a divine messenger, as well as a great ascetic and a rishi. who rose from a very low position to the highest spiritual glory through divine grace and self-effort. Very important. He did thousands of years of tapas that he did. That part we did not cover. Okay? So he knew, personal knowledge, became one with Brahman, and he became a savior of men and teacher and reformer of people's manners and character. Now, so you see how now, with a very brief introduction, how he lived and exemplified through his personal experience and conduct the truths that are taught in the sutras. Very important. So he became an adhikari. He has every right to the authority to teach us. And now the qualification for the student, myself, yourself, and anybody who's listening to this. We covered the importance of character, very important of reducing selfishness and all that. But what happens, right? Is it really that difficult? Do I need to be a rich person? Do I need to be a scholar? Do I need to be a tapasvi? Do I need to be engaged in discipline, spiritual discipline? Do I need to do worship? Do I need to be person who does lots of charity? What are the qualifications? Are there any qualifications required? Bhagavan himself says. Now listen very carefully. And this is the charge, a command to us to begin the Narada Bhakti Sutra. Okay, this is from chapter 9, which is actually Raja Vidya, Raja Guhya Yoga in Bhagavad Gita. Slokams are 9:30, chapter number 9, slokams 30 to 34. I'm going to read the meaning in English to you. Listen very carefully, and then you will see what Bhagavan himself says. What is the qualification required for us to enter the Bhakti Marga? Even a person of bad conduct should be considered as holy if he worships me exclusive of any other thoughts, because such worship will result only in the welfare all around. Now remember what happened to Ratnakar, what happened to Angulimala, right? You know all those stories, okay? He promptly develops righteous conduct and becomes divinely peaceful. Oh, my dear son of Kunti, understand well and announce to the world that my devotee never perishes. Beautiful declaration from Bhagavan. Me bhaktaha na pranasyati. Partha, even people of the weaker gender, tradesmen and laborers in the society and others with inferior birth surrender to me and attain the supreme state, don't they? So is it necessary to say again then that people with meritorious birth and those with spiritual attainments will also attain this most exalted state? Therefore, having been born in the world of impermanence and misery, worship me with full devotion. Turn your mind to me. Be devoted to me. Sacrifice everything to me. Worship me ceaselessly. Taking me as your supreme goal and fixing yourself on me, thus you will attain me. Bhagavan's declaration. Manmana bhava, mad bhakto, matyaji, mam namaskuru. Mame vaishyasi, yuktva evam atmanam mat parayanaha. So the only qualification, only thing required from us is a spark of desire to love Bhagavan. That's all. That's the only thing that's required. Sincere desire to love Bhagavan. And we're going to see the very first sutram. Let us cover that again. It says, Athato Bhaktim Vyakyasyamaha. I want to cover that a little bit more detail so that make sure that we not missed anything. We said Ataha, right? Bhaktim Vyakyasyamaha. Atha, after this, now then. That's what it means. And after what? After getting this sincere desire, not as an intellectual exercise, curiosity. No. Sincere desire. I want to touch the lotus feet that is seated in my heart. That little spark of sincerity. Sincerity is very important. Atha, with that. Ataha, we said auspiciousness and very sacred and all that. Why is this so sacred? What is so great about this bhakti that is so sacred? Because bhakti is the easiest of all the paths available. Seriously. Because when you look to me, I look to you. Bhagavan says. All I have to do is just look to him, want to look at him. Then immediately he takes over. I don't have to go through tremendous amount of sadhanas and this and all other things becomes a natural resultant of something, the easiest. Second, you don't need any pre-qualification. You don't have to have read Sanskrit or any other language or Vedam or Stotrangal, nothing. Look at the various devotees that we have had. Kannappa Nayanar, he was just a hunter, right? Mirabai, what was she? Kulasekaran Alvar, Tirupanar Alvar. You can name devotees that are, see what type of scholarship they had, what was their sex like, what gender like, was they man or woman, were they advanced in age or were they young, like Dhruva and Prahlada. So the age, the gender, the status in society, scholarship, caste in which you are born in so-called Varnasramam, none of those matters. Sabari, how old she was, right? So none of that matters. And it is the easiest path available to everybody. And when you love God and touch him and embrace him, and that itself gives you the relief from the samsaram, bondage of birth and death cycle. That's why bhakti, and we saw earlier on, bhakti, karma, jnanam, they are all one and the same. There is really no different. Let's not get hung up on that. Now, there are several so-called definitions of bhakti that we find in scriptures that I am going to skip because that's somebody else's definition. You define bhakti your own way. It's bhakti. This is where the word Vyakyasyamaha becomes important. Vyakyasyamaha does not mean an explanation. Please understand that. It is a commentary, giving a commentary. So how can you explain knowledge? You can explain an understanding, yes. But how can you explain an experience? Impossible. An experience is knowledge. See, yat bhavam tad bhavati. So, what Narada says, Vyakyasyamaha, I'm going to give a commentary on that. This commentary is nothing but the experiences of many people who have experiences, and you also have experiences, I have experiences, so that's the way that is approaching it. That's why the word Vyakyasyamaha appears. Bhaktim is preceded by Ataha. Now you know why that is Mangalagaram, that is auspiciousness, because it's the easiest path available to everybody and no pre-qualification, no pre-education required, and all you can jump into it, and the most easy. And so, Athato Bhaktim Vyakyasyamaha. Now, the next one is Sa Tvasmin Parama Prema Rupa. That we will take up tomorrow because our time is up right now. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om Samastalokaha Sukhino Bhavantu Samastalokaha सुखिनो भवन्तु समस्तलोकाः सुखिनो भवन्तु। ओम शांति शांति शांति। हरि ओम।